I'll just wait until I see a recording. There we are. Morning, all. Justin, Kieran, thanks very much for the introduction there. Yeah, I'm Senior Executive Planner at the Eastern Midland Regional Assembly. And through your own work, you've probably engaged with us through our role around EU funding and being contact points for the URBACT programme and the European Urban Initiative, and possibly engagement through Interreg Europe projects as well. We're very much interested in kind of funding opportunities and knowledge exchange. The regional assemblies ourselves, we have a number of statutory functions, as Kieran mentioned there, that we make and implement the regional spatial and economic strategies. So that's very much a planning and economic development function that we have. And in that, they're very wide-ranging strategies dealing with all aspects of the spatial development of our regions and economic development, right from infrastructure right down to the economic piece as well. We also have our statutory functions in relation to the LECPs. That's under the Local Government Reform Act. So we're required to issue statements of consistency in relation to those. So we review the draft LECPs, and we would have done that, and our sister regional assemblies would have done that for all of the LECPs, looking for consistency between the RSESs. So in terms of that and our work, we obviously need to monitor our implementation. There's a statutory monitoring function as well. Just like the LECPs, the regional assemblies are required every number of years to report on the monitoring of our regional spatial and economic strategies. So there's real alignment there. We produce a monitoring report for that, formally submitted to NOAC, but under the new legislation now we submit it directly to the Office of the Planning Regulator. So to assist us with that monitoring, we engaged AIRO Maynooth in terms of a collaborative project to ultimately, in the first instance, to assist us with our monitoring. So in terms of the implementation of the regional strategies, we rely a lot on local government and government departments and other public bodies for the substantive implementation of the regional spatial and economic strategy. So this is very much informed and did inform what became the regional development monitor. In very broad terms, the RDM that Justin will speak about is a visualization and mapping tool containing relevant authoritative public data for wide range that can be used by wide-ranging stakeholders. It includes socio-demographic indicators, economic indicators, and environmental indicators. And just to say, it's not static; it's an ongoing project. Justin will tell you more about the details of it, but it continues to evolve since early last year. It includes, it's home to the National Census Atlas for the 2022 census information, as well as an S3 dashboard. So I suppose that's the broad overview. So I'll hand back to you now, Kieran, and Justin can give that broader presentation.
Okay, thanks very much, Owen. I really appreciate that and really appreciate your cooperation with us on this webinar. So at this stage, just happy to hand over to Justin. Many of you would have seen his presentation at the annual networking event in Carrick-on-Shannon on the 15th of October. So without Justin is with the All-Ireland Regional Observatory in NUI Maynooth and is also involved in other work as well. I have also worked with Justin on another project to do with the services available at public libraries in recent weeks as well. So really appreciate the work that Justin is doing. So hand over to you now, Justin, and I think maybe we can go to presentation screen for the webinar.
Thanks, Kieran. Just give me 1 second to get set up. Okay, we on full screen there, Owen? Kieran, looks good?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Listen, good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many people on the call on today, which is unofficially Blue Monday, which is, anyway, supposed to be the saddest day of the year. So nothing better than a presentation on data and indicators to try and cheer everyone up. So we'll see how we get on with this. Look, this is, I guess, a follow-up to a session I did up in Carrick-on-Shannon before Christmas, when we gave a fairly broad overview about the LECPs and the indicators and went through lots and lots of different resources. At the end of that session, I focused a little bit on the RDM. And the bulk of today is going to be about what's in the RDM for people across this call and how it can be used for your own work within your local authorities. It's absolutely useful for the LECPs, but I think for much broader across all community, economic development, other groups in local authorities. So what we're going to go through, I'll give you a little bit of background to RDM, where it came about. I'll work through a couple of quick examples looking at demographics, housing and environment. Again, all of these part of LECP. And probably the most important piece really is just to show you what's in the National Census Atlas. So for everyone here from different local authorities, you can adapt this tool to your own local authority to create different maps of your county. But importantly, everyone on the call here engages with all the elected members. So it's actually also a great tool to undertake analysis for local electoral areas, municipal districts, and so on. We can do a questions and answers session then at the end, and I'm happy to go back a little bit of what we talked about in Carrick and Shannon to look at some of the other resources and tools and techniques that are out there to help with kind of monitoring and understanding what's going on at local authorities. So to start with a little bit of background to AIRO, well, we're based in Maynooth University. Most of our work is really within and across the Irish planning sector. So we'll be working with the team in the National Planning Framework, the Department of the Environment there. Obviously very close ties with Owen and the regional assemblies on the three regional spatial economic strategies and other works across there. And I've been involved in, I'd say, nearly every local authority across the country over the years on various projects, and I see plenty of people on the call here. I see Susan has just come on from Kildare. There's teams there from Waterford, Wexford. We've been involved in all sorts of works there, and importantly for this, we've been involved in many of the different LECPs, from the socio-economic statements to the high-level goals to the objectives to the implementation plan, all that stuff. So that's coming full circle now. We're coming back to kind of monitoring and indicators. So we're kind of tuned into this whole thing from the very start. AIRO, we also have a spin-out company called People in Place, and I know some of our team there are involved in different local authorities producing reports, documents, and then different data tools that are out there. And I see the guys are there from Wicklow, who have a kind of a local level data monitor looking at, settlements within the county LEAs, MDs, and so on. So we can discuss all of that as we go through. So really what the RDM is, okay, so it's very simply, it's a website with a whole series of different dashboards, mapping tools within there. And the idea of this is to try and track and look to see how things are going across the country, with the main focus on at the geographic level, at county level, and at regional strategic planning area level. Lots and lots of data in there to see what's going on in regions, local authorities, towns, LEAs, and so on. So it's literally just a whole series of these different tools with all sorts of data coming from different sources. So mapping tools, dashboards, all sorts of bits and pieces. We'll work through some of these. They're all fairly straightforward to use, so you don't need any, technical skill set. You just open these things up and you can see what's happening in the background. So where this came from, it really came coming down from, obviously, National Planning Framework to the three regional assemblies, and then the requirement to create the region spatial economic strategies. So this tool was set up to try and track progress across the three regions.
1,000 would get the ball rolling. What we're trying.
Okay. Right. And some of the reason for this, why the regional assembly set this up, as you all know on the call here, there's this growing need for evidence and data coming from many government departments, including Kieran's, whether it's from the Department of Housing and Planning, from Climate Action, from housing related stuff. So you have your county development plans. We now have the housing needs and demand assessment. There's further work now looking at capacity audits. Of course, our LECPs, you got Healthy Ireland, SIPCs, climate action reports. There's so much so many requirements coming down now for data to try and understand what's going on. And this is a fairly big ask across local authorities, and it is time consuming, and it is absolutely a specialist skill set. I guess the the fact that we've worked with so many local authorities across the country, you can see there really is different levels of resources and skill sets within certain local authorities. Some local authorities are really well equipped, they've got bigger staff numbers working on this, and then others not so much the case. So levels of expertise are different across local authorities, and of course staff members and skill set and knowledge changes and moves within divisions, departments and local authorities. So the idea of the RDM was to try and build up this tool that's available for everyone, to try and take away some of this technical stuff in the background and just make it accessible to everybody. A key piece for this is that the Regional Development Monitor is built on GeoHive, the National Geospatial Platform. So it's kind of connected into the state infrastructure now in terms of data. So it's not something that's going to go away. It's going to continue. And myself being from a university, you see many of these projects, they come along for a couple of years and then they disappear. This is around for quite some time now, and it's fully connected within central government. So the intention is that this will be there. And for people on this call, it should be a resource that you can rely on. It'll be updated and it'll be in place. Okay, lots and lots of data in here. So many of you on the call are your different team members. Will be, looking for things from the CSO, from Fáilte Ireland, from Geodirectory vacancy, all the NOAC data. So we pull all this sort of stuff in together into the RDM, and it's all made accessible. We create it on this Esri platform. Many of your own GIS teams will be using this software. And an important point on this is that anything on the RDM, you should be seamlessly able to connect it into your own system. So it's a follow-up chat we can have, but you can connect your IT GIS teams in with the RDM and start pulling all this data in for yourselves. Key thing behind this then is the National Census Atlas. So there's over 200 different indicators on here that describe your local area, local authority, right down to your neighborhood level. So lots and lots of data on there. We're going to show a couple examples on this in a few minutes. So we're going to jump on to demonstration. We're going to look at a couple of things, looking at demographic change, and we're going to look at some housing data and some environmental data. So I'm going to jump over and start showing the tool now. Now, sometimes when this is demonstrated on Teams, it can be a little bit slow just with the amount of people on the call and broadband access and so on. So hopefully we'll have no interruptions. So basically this is the RDM. At the top, you got a number of different sections along here, our people and places. So this is all things about population, about compact growth, urban regeneration, all that sort of thing. Our green and sustainable future is environmental data, climate action. We got our region's economy then, everything from unemployment to employment to commuting patterns, local enterprise office data, foreign direct investment, and we got our national census atlas. So you simply click on these sections here to bring you into a main part of the tool. So we'll just show a couple of examples here. So the first one we're looking at here is a dashboard simply on population change. I know this is 2022, but just show you how this works. So all of the dashboards are pretty much set up in the same way. So you present your data here. You can then select your geography. So you can look at regions. So remember, this is the regional tool to start with. So it talks about data for the three regional assemblies and then the strategic planning areas. You can change it to county or you can change it to all geography. So you change it to all geography, you'll see it presents the regional assemblies, strategic planning areas, and all your local authorities. You can then change this to depending on what region you're interested in. So if you're up in Donegal, right, you're interested in the northern and western region, you're not interested in the data down in Wexford and Carlow and so on. So we change this to northern and western, and we can see the data changes here. So it's specific to that region. So that's useful when you're talking about how your county relates to the regional tiers and so on. You select your indicator here. So we could just look at, say, total percentage population change. So we click on this one. And we'll just go back and show all local authorities, and we'll just change it to county so we can see the major change across the country here. You can kind of zoom in here to look at your figures, so you can see Dublin City increased by 6.9%, South Dublin 8%, and so on. We can see Longford, our biggest hitter across the country, 14.4%. So very simple, straightforward, turn these on and off. You got some detail in the background about why this population has changed. So looking at natural increases versus net migration. So who moved into the local authority, or is it based on the underlying population with lots more births minus deaths and so on? So different data to describe what's going on. Okay, we'll have a look at another one here looking at some key things that are certainly at LECP levels for quality of life, affordability, accessibility to housing. There's lots of data here on, let's say, residential property sales or residential rental prices. So what we're looking at here is all the rental prices across the country. So this gets updated on an annual basis. So you don't have to go and I think we have a bit of interference here. You don't have to go and get access to this data in the background. It's sitting there. So if we're from, let's say, Kilkenny, we want to see what's going on in terms of rental prices in Kilkenny. You click on that and you should get a profile here then of rental prices in Kilkenny. So in terms of monitoring and looking at change, you know, there's just a couple of clicks of a few buttons here when you have your full rental price history across Kilkenny or whatever local authority you want to work with. So how does Kilkenny relate to Waterford? So you can compare and contrast the two different areas. So if you're building up data for your LECP or to see how things change, it's very easy just to get the stuff from here rather than going to all the different sources trying to download it. So that's a quick example. If you want to download that data, you can download the summary sheet in the background there. So two very quick examples in that. Loads and loads on here on commencements, on planning permissions, new dwelling completions, of course, which is such a big one on how are we building. We're due to build minimum 50,000 houses a year over the next number of years. So this dashboard in here, you know, brings all of this data together. It's a little bit slow coming in here, but it presents the full story of the number of completions by quarter for each local authority. So very quickly you can work through all of these. So we'll look at some environmental data just to show some of the differences there. So under here, many different things here looking at sustainable management of water, low carbon future, biodiversity, natural heritage. So the first one we'll look at here, just a different type of input. This has got mapping tools in here as well. This is looking at urban wastewater treatment compliance. So this is very much kind of a planning type thing, engineering, definitely in more environmental, but it is an important part of LECPs as well on where people are living and what services are in place in terms of water outages and that sort of thing. So this data comes from the EPA. They produce this very detailed report every year. We basically take the data from this, and you can see then across the country where there are areas where treatment and effluent quality is below standard. Towns, you know, still releasing untreated sewage. So you can see your little red spots across the country. So very quickly, you can just jump on here and get an idea of what's going on. Lots and lots down here. I'm just going to fly down here, look at some other environmental data. There's lots here on, let's say, looking at water quality. So rather than going to the EPA, lots and lots built in here looking at the, oh, sorry, that's after coming out there. Whoops, excuse me now. Let me just get down to this. Okay, so you can see our map here. You can see our water quality across the country. So you can see across the different local authorities the level of water quality. So as you can tell there from this, blue is high quality, down towards red is bad quality. So looking down at Clare, you can see, you know, some good quality, average quality in places, and then a number of different places where the water quality is substandard according to the latest EPA stuff. So just another example of different type of tool that's sitting with on here. On our region's economy, of course, key part of LECP, and many of the LECP reports, certainly for the socio-economic statements, the data we would have done for other local authorities, most of the data is now sitting in here, allow you to compare and contrast your local authority, whether you're looking at medium incomes, whether you're looking at foreign direct investment data and so on. So looking at labour market profile, unemployment, participation rates, lots of graphics and data sitting in there. Total disposable income. So here's an interesting one that the latest stuff has just been updated by the CSO. So again, we can change this and we'll go to county. Okay, so you can see the different profile in terms of disposable income across our local authority. So in Dublin, 32,000, somewhere like Roscommon, 24,000, Laois, 22, Longford, 22, and so on. So different levels in place. So you look at the difference between disposable income, excluding rent, which is of course an important piece. Turn that on, and then if we're looking at Mayo, you click this, you can see your profile. Well, how has disposable income in Mayo changed? Maybe from the initial LECP, around 2016, 17, our latest ones. So this data will track and be updated in due course as we go along. Another important one here, which is a really good indicator looking at the strength of economies in each local authority. So what this graphic produces here is data on state-assisted employment. So this is on the number of state-assisted jobs within a local authority. So that's either IDA Enterprise, IDA Ireland supported or Enterprise Ireland supported. So if we look at Cork County, this blue here is foreign direct investment. So we click on that, we can see the number of jobs that are sitting within Cork that are FDI supported. Of course, that's such a big benefit in our current, I guess, economic environment with tariffs and all sorts of things coming on. Reliance on FDI may not be as strong as it was in the past, or more of a risk factor. But of course, then our own indigenous companies, our Enterprise Ireland supported. You click on this, you can see the profile of what's going on across each area. So lots and lots in here for every single local authority. So that's only an example of 3 or 4. There's about 70 different dashboards within here looking at all sorts of different things. Right, I just want to show you the National Census Atlas and work through a couple of examples on this to show you how this can be of use. So as Kieran said at the outset, when the LECPs were started, we were still sort of working off Census 2016 data. A number of local authorities got out of the blocks early. Their LECPs may have been based on that data. Others would have had Census 22 indicators involved. So there's everything on here from Census 22, all your sort of core indicators, looking at demographics, social, education, health, housing, economy, travel. So all of these parts of your LECP in one way or another. So I'm just going to show a couple of quick examples here of some of this data. So what we're looking at here is standard age cohorts. So within here, we've got all our different groups here. We've got our young population, our aging population. We got a specific young age cohort. So for your SIPSI crew within the local authorities, very specific data set up in there. So it is absolutely policy relevant. This one here, we're looking at population age 65 plus. Now, this is such an important piece for where Ireland is going. We had a 25% increase in the population age 65 plus between 2016 and 2022. That's on average across the country. That's going to accelerate massively between now and the lifetime of this LECP, and certainly the next one. So by 2040, we're facing a very, very different country in terms of the age of our population. And of course, for everyone in local authorities, that is a real impact on services and requirements. And especially when we think about some of our local authorities where we've quite a rural population, peripheral population, and aging, the requirements and need for service and facilities are really going to be quite tight in that area. So just to show how this works, right? So this is mapping the data age 65 plus. Obviously, our darker areas are over 35%. So over a third of the population of these areas are age 65 plus. We have a number of these different zooms here. So let's jump in here to Dublin and we'll see what's going on. So when you click on this zoom, it brings you into Dublin. So you can see the level of detail that's in place right across these areas. So if you're from Dublin city centre, we can zoom into these areas here. You can see data is presented for right down to small neighbourhood level. So literally, a couple of estates up around 75, 100 households, most of these things. So really detailed local level data. So no matter where you're from in the country, whether you're looking at rural areas or all your different towns and villages, you now have all the data right down to this state level at your hands through a click of a couple of buttons. You've no work to do on this kind of census mapping and pulling the data down. If you click on one of these boundaries, so if you zoom in, see this little area here, you click on that. We've developed this little pop-up here, which gives you full profile of that small area. So that tells you within there, 196 population, up towards nearly 50% of the population in there are already age 65 plus. It then puts that area into context with the ED that it's in, the Beaumont ED, into context with Dublin city and suburbs. So that ED, that small area, 47%, across Dublin it's only 13%. It provides the data for the local electoral area it's in, the municipal district that it's in, in terms of the broader planning area, these MASP areas, so these commuter areas, metropolitan area spatial plans, and it provides data up to the state. So it's a really useful tool, certainly for people on this call, but certainly across your local authority, in particular for all these different community groups that are out there working on the ground, in many cases trying to get evidence together to support funding applications, to draw down funding, whether it's from Pobble or from Kieran's own department for different places. There's really good tools here to build up your data profile of your local area, right? So that's what that does. That's available for every single one of these indicators across the country. Right, I'm just going to show you one other thing now in relation to population. So we're going to look at population change, and of course Ireland is whatever 10% change 16 to 2022. That's kind of standard in Ireland at the moment now because we're growing so much, but on an international basis, that's absolutely off the chart. So Ireland is growing and has been growing faster than nearly all EU countries and way ahead of the OECD international averages. So that's a great thing for the country. But what it also means is that for local authorities trying to keep track with facilities and requirements and infrastructure is a major challenge. And we know that's in place at the moment. We have our new infrastructure plan in place now. Looking at Dublin here at the moment, our M50 on the outside, we're absolutely at full capacity on that. There's so many people at work. The population is growing so much in some of these parts. It's literally at chock-a-block. So this brings real issues in terms of how we're going to deliver infrastructure and change things. And of course, housing is such a big issue at the moment now. How do we keep up with housing and build housing for this population that's growing and growing? But what this map is showing here is actually the flip of that, right? So this is showing population decline. So it's not all growth across the country. Some areas are actually declining in population. And whereas you might think of Dublin as somewhere that's growing and growing, what these circles here are showing actually population decline in some of these EDs. And these are very old traditional neighbourhoods, north parts of Dublin, eastern parts of South Dublin in around Templeogue, Rathfarnham and these sort of areas. So housing estates that would have been built back in the 60s, 70s, and in the last number of years, very low transition of housing, not really many people moving in there, an aging and an elderly population living within there. So there is quite a lot of population decline in parts of Dublin. But as we move out then across into our commuter area, you can see very little in any of our colleagues here from Louth, Meath, Kildare, Wicklow, very little population decline. It's all growth, and a very different challenge there, keeping up with the growth. And that feeds into schools, it feeds into community services, it feeds into housing. But as we start to move further west, it tells a different story. So the challenges, the SCOT analysis, the pressures for our local authorities are so different across the country from eastern parts as we move west. So looking at Donegal, Mayo, parts of Clare, places out here like the Loophead Peninsula, completely changed in the last 20 years. Declining population, the future of some of these areas, how do we get population back in there? How do we build housing? How do we attract families? How do we have jobs? Is a real challenge and a real difficult policy piece for local authorities and for government. Relation to that, many of you will have heard the GAA demographic report, just before Christmas there, the major pressures that are coming down on GAA clubs across the country would not even been able to field, under 12, under 15 teams amalgamating. So, that is related to sport, it's culture, but it's central to, how our country is operating and how rural places are changing. So just one indicator here tells such a different story as to what's going on across the country. And really what I'm showing here is the power of this tool to be used within local authorities to describe your areas and see what's going on. You could have 20 pages talking about this, but when you have these maps and these tools, it's very easy to tell the story and let people know what's happening. So really useful in council chambers and so on to demonstrate what's happening. So I'm going to show you one last example on this about how you can create your own maps for your local authority. So we're going to look at unemployment. So we're going to turn on principal economic status here, and we're going to turn on unemployment. So this, of course, the first LECPs, you know, number one of the thing was kind of job creation. How do we get people back into work, you know, after the sort of economic crash and so on? We're at a completely different stage now where we have full employment. But you'll have noticed over the last certainly 6 months, youth unemployment is increasing in all local authorities, and the easy roll from graduates getting into first jobs is not as straightforward anymore. That's related to, you know, international things in economics, but also growing things related to AI and how that is coming on, with graduate roles being a little bit lower, hard to get into. So unemployment, certainly at the youth level, is starting to, as they say, tick up a little bit over the last while. So this map presents unemployment trends across the country. So again, we'll have a look at one of our Zooms here. We'll jump into, let's say, Limerick City. I'm sure there's Limerick people on the call. And certain areas of Limerick, as we know, quite disadvantaged, high levels of unemployment. So you can see very unique patterns within Limerick there. You jump up to Galway, you can see the same sort of thing. Our different estates that are going on down in Cork City. We would have had our target areas and the intervention areas. You can very clearly see what's going on. So a really useful tool to see what's going on there. But there is a really nice piece on this now. So what you can do is tailor this tool to your own particular local authority. So this gets a little bit technical here. We have all these notes in here as to how you do this. So there's a viewer guide here which lets you know how you can query your area, filter by geography, filter by area, right? So once you do this a couple of times, you know what's going on. So you can do this and you can set a filter here. So we're going to add a clause. And we're going to filter by any geography. So you can create your own map for any regional assembly area, NUTS 2, strategic planning area, NUTS 3, any local authority, any LEA, MD, ED, MASP, any settlement across the country. So you can create specific maps for Ballincollig or Blarney or, you know, Maynooth or wherever it is. So for this example, we're just going to do an LA one here. So we're going to turn on LA. And you will get your list of local authorities across the country. So let's do something for, we'll produce something for Kerry. So we'll click Kerry, right? We're going to turn on this here. You will then see if this plays ball at me. Okay, you will see all the rest of the data has now disappeared off the screen. So effectively on the tool now, you can create your own map for your own local authority or any of the sub-geographies within there using that technique. So you can then go into your print function here. You can click on this. You can create your own map output, either as PDF or JPEG, wherever you want to pop into a report. So this is a real step forward in terms of analysis, demographics, you know, this whole thing, evidence-informed planning across Ireland. This is our census forms that we fund as citizens through taxpayers. It's brought to life on this tool, and it's now accessible for anyone on this call or anyone in local authority to start making their own maps and making real good use of that. And that's without any need for access to your GIS teams or technical people. So it's a really good tool and some really good stuff there in the background on that. So that's in a nutshell what's on the RDM. I think I'll leave it there for now, Kieran. We can open to any questions. I have some other slides of other examples of kind of reports that we've done over the last while for people on, you know, LECP related infographics, commuting profiles, all that sort of stuff. So we can come back to that, Kieran, through the questions and answers. So open to the floor for a chat now, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Justin. Excellent presentation. So we have a couple of questions have come in on the chat. So we might just